Welcome to the second part of this practical demo where we will include or we will spin up the API gateway for our Lambda to serve the request. So if you from the services, if you search for API gateway, then the API gateway console will open and we have to create an API gateway for it. So I will select create API and then we will create a REST API for our website and I will select build and the API details I will give new API and the API name is student API and the description is optional and it should be a regional API and I will simply create an API. So the API is created. Now, if you don't have an idea about API gateway, how it works, please do some research about it and get some idea how this API gateway works because this API gateway topic is very complicated one. Okay, how codes work, how to deploy an API gateway, how to monitor an API gateway, how can you protect or how can you authorize an API gateway. These are all things that you need to know before doing some things in API gateway because if you by anyhow um, expose your API gateway to the internet without any authorization, then this is a very bad practice of doing it. I will anyway delete all these resources just after this demo. So for me, this is fine. But if you don't want to expose your API gateway to public, you should really make an authentication mechanism out of it. So you should configure an authorizer to your API gateway, then configure your methods to use that authorizer so that it is not exposed to everyone on the internet. So you should get an idea about how API Gateway works. But if you just want to follow this video and destroy all the resources out after that, this is perfectly fine. So we have created the API Gateway. Created the API Gateway. Now, what we will do? We will create some methods out of it and we will create a resource out of it. So on the root of my API gateway, currently there is nothing, but this API gateway is for a student information, right? So we will create a student resource, where if in browser, if you give student from the root, if you want to go student from the root, then it will go give you the student information. So I will create the resource for student and within that student as I have enabled the course, so the options method by default created, but I want to also create one method called get. So just to get the student information from the Lambda function. So I will create a get method and the integration type means where or who will serve my API gateway. So in the backend, one Lambda function, the Lambda function you remember I have created or we have created from the part 1 of the series. So that Lambda function should serve my get request. So the Lambda proxy integration you should enable so that it sends the request to your Lambda function as a structural event format, not haphazardly. So and the Lambda function you have to choose. So I will choose my Lambda function, the student information function, and that's it. That and you are done. So I will create the method. So my method is created and you see right now on the root level you have two method, one is get and one is student, and somehow this page is not responding, so I will refresh this page and let's see. Yeah, now it's responding again. So my get and options method are created. Now what we have to do, we have to enable course on both of them. So I will select get and option and I will save it, and after the course enabled I have to deploy the API again. So I will select deploy API and I will select a new stage I have to create and I will give it a name as prod and I will deploy it. Now my resources are deployed, my API gateway is ready for testing. So what I will do, I will send a get request to my Lambda function to check if my API gateway can read the DynamoDB table with my Lambda, with the help of my Lambda function or not. So I will select on test, and I will just click on test and see if I get a 200 response or not. Voila, I see a 200 response came in with two data that we have, roll number 919091 and roll number 9090. That means my API gateway integration to Lambda is correctly working, all the codes are enabled, and everything is smooth and running. Now, one step more. So, what we are going to do? We are going to create another resource under this student. Why? Because of the put request. So the put request will be served for a particular roll number, because whenever you want to insert a data into the DynamoDB table, it will ask you for a primary key. And for us, the primary key is the roll number. Okay, now we will create another uh, resource under this root object under student, and the resource name is curly braces roll number. So it is in camel case. So the roll number is required because whenever we need to select a particular student with a roll number, this roll number needs to be defined here. So we give this URL to our backend with the roll number, with this particular property or the identifier in the front end, and the roll number will hold the roll number that needs to be inserted inside the backend. So we need to create it under student, and then the student information, the roll number, the primary key, and we will pass this from our front end. So we need to create the resource, and we also enable this course option method to it, and we will just create the resource. So my options is now created. Now it's time to create my get method for it. So I will select create method, and then I will choose the Lambda function, the proxy, and my exact Lambda function. So two method, one is get and one options is by default created. So now you know what to do is to enable course, and I will select get an option, and I will just save this. As soon as my course enablement is done, you know what to do again. We have to deploy the API. So we deploy the API in the same stage, in the production stage or the prod stage that we have created, and I will deploy. So at the end, your API gateway should look like this. Apart from that, we also have another method that we have to create, that is the put method. But let's see if till roll number it works or not. So now I will test it, and remember, if you don't give any roll number, it should return everything. So I will test it, and I see everything is returned, like the 9091 and 9090, both of the roll number remain. Thing that I wanted to show you is that our API gateway to Lambda integration is working. So the read is working. Now I have to create another method, and you know which method it is. It is the put method. So I will select this put method, Lambda function with proxy integration, and choose our Lambda function, and I will create the method. Now again, you know the drill. We have to enable course for our put method. You can select all of them or just the put, because the course already enabled for get an option. Then select the root and deploy API. Select the stage of prod and deploy. So this is my final API gateway. How it looks like. It has a student root, and within that student root we have a roll number, and within that roll number it has three methods: get, options, and put. Now it's time to test the put method. Now if we go to test and just click on test, it will give me an error that the JSON object must be string, byte, or array, that none type. That means the roll number is not defined. So what I can do here, I can create a JSON object, and the JSON object is first of all role, and the role is suppose 001, and then we have maybe name maybe ABC, and then age. So the age is maybe 20. Now if I click on test, I see it says that invalid JSON in request body. Why is that? Let me figure it out. So I think I have done a very silly mistake of not giving the comma properly. So now if I select test, so it says that student data updated successfully, 001 and 20. And if I go to dynamodb table, and if I just refresh this one, I see that the student data is updated. Now what we can check is again invoking the get request and see if all the three resources are coming. So we see one resource came in, two resource came in, and the third resource also came in. So we know that our DynamoDB integration works perfectly fine. So this request body, please remember, I have created this one. So you also can create to test this put request. If you don't want to test your put request, if the API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB integration works or not, you can just follow this video through, not doing any testing, because anyway we will be doing the testing from the front end. So we can say that our API Gateway to Lambda to DynamoDB integration works perfectly fine. Our API is ready to serve requests from our front end. So this is it for this second part of this video. I just wanted to show you, this is the another middleware where we are serving the request. In the next video, of course, that will be the final one, where I will show you how can you integrate the front end to backend with the CloudFront distribution, and I will also show you the security perspective of it, maybe in another video of the after that. But next video is where we will integrate everything together, and we will serve the request from front end to backend. So stay tuned for the next video, and I hope you will enjoy this. So if you are new to this channel, kindly like, share, subscribe, and comment your thought. I will be back with the part 3 of the of very exciting series of this one, when we will integrate everything and we will test it together. So stay tuned and take care and goodbye.